If you've seen Ethan Tapper on Instagram, you know that he's all about the tiny little details of forest life. His love for trees and the beauty of nature is so infectious, he's earned a huge social media following and a New England Book Award for his bestseller, How to Love a Forest. He's coming on Across the Fence to talk with me today. Hello, Vermont. Every time I want to give up on social media, land of FOMO and brain rot, I think about the people who are successfully harnessing its power to educate and enlighten the rest of us. Case in point, Ethan Tapper. A forester, author, and frontman of the punk band The Bubs, Ethan also calls himself a digital storyteller, using Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook to teach his hundreds of thousands of followers about the forest management practices he calls counterintuitive, but that are vital for rebuilding resilient forest ecosystems. Ethan Tapper, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Amy.
I am so excited to be here with you. Full-on media personality in the seat today. I'm going to see how this goes. So I want to jump right into it. What are the counterintuitive practices that you're preaching when you are on all these platforms?
So a lot of times we talk about, use the word just now, protecting forests. Mm-hmm. How can we protect these forests that are foundational to our lives as Vermonters, ecologically, culturally, economically? Mm-hmm. And, when we think about that, we're like, well, the way that we protect them is we don't cut any trees down, and we leave them alone and we let this thing that we call nature do its thing.
This was my mindset.
And then when you go a little deeper, what you'll see is that these forests are actually deeply wounded and struggling with all of these completely unprecedented threats and stressors, and that what it actually means to protect a forest in this moment sometimes requires intervention, management, even like the cutting of a tree, which is so counterintuitive.
Yeah, exactly, because we think that the way to protect is to nurture, to hold on to, obviously not to, and so it's a leap in order to get to the idea that cutting something down can actually be a way of expressing love.
Yeah, and it's not even, what I want to say is not even that it's like we should be out here cutting down trees and not feel bad about it, just that we need to add a little bit more complexity and a little bit more depth to this idea that what it means to care for nature, to protect these forests, is just to leave them alone, right? And that actually this moment requires of us this very ancient and beautiful thing, which is stewardship. Caretaking.
Yeah, we're engaged.
Yeah, we're engaged whether we want to be or not. That's the other thing too, is helping people understand that we do interact with these forests all the time, that we actually don't have an option to not affect them. And so let's make the decisions that affect forests in ways, with our eyes wide open.
Yeah. Are we only talking about Vermont forests, or are you talking about, so on your social media, are you talking about Vermont forests? Are you talking to Vermont? Who are you talking to? Which forests are you talking about?
It's an interesting thing because obviously most of my time I'm in Vermont, but then increasingly I'm traveling and I'm, engaging with forests all across North America.
Right? And you've got followers who are all over the world, I'd imagine.
And so sometimes we run into this problem where it's like, it's hard to say something very specific about Vermont that's applicable everywhere. Like I was just out doing these talks in Indiana and Kentucky, and a big theme in Indiana and Kentucky is that historically what their old growth forests were actually these open canopy forests and grasslands, prairies and savannas and oak woodlands, and that with the displacement of indigenous fire, with the suppression of natural fire, and with the loss of these herds of hundreds of millions of bison, they have lost these grasslands, they become forests. So how we get those forests back might be a really different answer. It might involve like cutting trees and doing things like burning, which is really different than what we do here. So I'm trying to sort of like be specific and tell these stories, but then also talk about themes that are broad enough that they're applicable outside of Vermont.
Right. And so, yes, and so you kind of have to actually then think about who the audience is and kind of tailor to who you're talking to. Okay. So what happens if we don't do these things?
It depends. This is the hard thing, right? The fundamental thing that I'm trying to address, like with my book and with the social media, is a lot of these nuances, right? I want to bring people in deeper to help them understand that there's no one simple answer to any of these questions. Like there are forests that the right thing for them is just to leave them alone, right? The right thing for them is to be like, how we're going to protect them is to leave them alone, such as in the case of our remnant old growth forests. There are other forests where to leave them alone would be irresponsible, right? Because they're dealing with all of these human-created situations that are impairing their ability to be healthy and to be resilient, right? So I don't want to tell people that the right thing to do is go out there and cut a bunch of trees. I want to tell people that the answer is complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're using social media really effectively in order to be able to do this. I want to share one of Ethan's Instagram clips with all of you so that you can see how he's essentially turned the platform into his forest classroom. So let's take a look at that clip.
Do when we have forests that look like this. So this is a young forest that regenerated from an abandoned pasture like 50 years ago. Right now it's what we call an even-aged forest. All these trees aggressively competing with each other and forming this really tight canopy. In this place that we now call New England, almost every forest that we have is relatively young, relatively even-aged, recovering from the way that they've been cleared and managed in the past. 400 years ago, the conditions we would have found on this landscape would have been the opposite of this. These multi-generational forests that would have had some big old trees and also tons of dead wood on the ground. And as you can see behind me, this forest has none of those things. And functionally, what that means is that this forest is missing all of these complex habitats that all of the native species that live here adapted to for thousands of years. We can't make this young forest an old growth forest, but we can make it old growthier. So I'm working with these loggers to fell individual trees and pockets of trees. We're doing a practice called crop tree release plus canopy gap establishment. We find our healthiest trees, we call them crop trees, and we release them from competition individually, cutting the less healthy trees that are competing with them. And in these pockets of unhealthy trees, we create these canopy gaps. Over time, what's gonna happen is that these crop trees that we release are gonna expand their crowns, and they're gonna become bigger trees faster. And these canopy gaps are gonna create this irregular canopy that's really important for some of our insectivorous birds, and then also to regenerate a new generation of trees, making this forest more multi-generational. No one is gonna mistake this forest for an old growth forest, but to the birds and the other creatures that rely on these habitats that we're creating here, they don't care. All that they care about is that these habitats are here now.
Yeah, I mean, so you can see he does a really fantastic job. You do a really fantastic job of educating, you're defining terms. I mean, it's really like going to a little miniature lecture. You're getting all of that information. And yet you're incredibly engaging and charismatic. And I have to ask, do you think that your performance background, front member of a band, right, performing with the Bubs, do you think that plays into your ease with social media or the way that you approach it?
I wonder. I think I'm definitely an atypical forester. A joke that we have with foresters is we're like, you know, for a forester to want to talk to people is such a rare thing.
Yeah.
Most foresters just want to be in the woods alone. And,
right, okay.
And I thought that I did too for a while, but then that's just not a part of my personality. And
Yeah.
we see that come out and, you know, with my public speaking that I do in the social media and all this other stuff, as well as the performance with the band.
Yeah. And so do you think that's a part of why your message is resonating? It's the delivery, but it's also the message?
I think about a lot of what I do as building trust. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about is hard to understand and you know, not always pleasant to understand. And part of the thing that we need to do to help people understand how this is how we protect our forests and this is how we care for our forests is to, you know, show them who I am. Yeah. Show them my personality, show them what my values are, show them how deeply I care about these forests and how I've dedicated my life to caring about these forests and how I love flowers and birds.
How the message is real.
Yeah, and then come with me when you trust me. Come with me and let me show you this thing that I did that is a little bit harder to understand, and maybe you'll be able to see that this is not antithetical to all of those aspects of my personality. This is an expression of that love.
Yeah. Well, and I want to show another clip now. And this one I think is great because it shows this way that you've also made a very big tent, I think, for your ideas. You've given a lot of room for everyone to join you in this mission. Let's take a look at that clip.
The one thing can be true at the same time. We can do this work of ecosystem stewardship and restoration because it's something that we have to do. And also because it's something that we get to do. We can save these ecosystems because they're precious and they make our world functional. And we can also protect them because they make our world beautiful and because we like them. And because we want to live in a world that's a little bit more full of beautiful things. I'm here at Bear Island and I'm doing this little passive weeding practice that I do. Just periodically going through these areas and just weeding around these special plants. The thing I'm weeding around right now is this. A species of fern called ostrich fern that often grows in these floodplains and riparian areas, and that gets really tall. Ostrich fern is a special species. It has all these amazing qualities. It provides all these amazing habitats. And another thing that's true is that when I was a little kid, I remember going to my cousin's house, and by the Saxons River, there was a forest of these ferns that were way over our head. And now I know that those are ostrich ferns. We can do this work of ecosystem stewardship and restoration in ways that are very dry and very serious and scientific. And we can do it in ways that at the same time are joyful and that are about not just promoting the functionality of these ecosystems, but also just this beautiful world that we want to live in. I want to live in a world that is functional and biodiverse and resilient. And I also want to live in a world where future generations of people can walk through these forests of ostrich ferns that tower way over their heads. So here at Bear Island, I'm making some great habitat, and I'm also helping create a world that I want to live in. Got it.
Okay. So pretty fantastic, right? What is your ultimate goal for your advocacy work?
I mean, my ultimate goal is that I'm advocating for ecosystems and for people to take up this mantle of responsibility to become stewards of these ecosystems that our lives completely depend on and that also make our lives so much better.
Yeah. And do you think there's another book?
There is, yeah. It'll be out next fall.
It'll be out next fall.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So can you tell us a tiny bit about it? A little advanced preview? Is it more?
Yeah, so I mean, I just have this writing practice. This
Okay.
is how I wrote How to Love a Forest. I wrote it over about 8 years, writing 1 hour at a time from 5 to 6 in the morning. And of course, when the book went away to be printed, I still wanted to keep up that practice. So I just kept on writing. This new one is set like an almanac around the seasons of the year. Has a lot to do with birds and has a lot to do with this radical act of sort of like staying and investing in place.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that means that we're definitely going to have the pleasure of having Ethan Tapper join us again here on the show. Ethan, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
If you're not already following Ethan Tapper on social media, now's the time. Find him on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube using the handle @HowToLoveAForest. It's there on the screen. And you should check the library or your local bookseller for a copy of the book. It is an absolutely wonderful read. Again, Ethan, thanks so much. Can't wait to have you on again. And as always, thank you, Vermont, for learning and exploring with me today. And thanks to the team that makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Amy Finley. This is Across the Fence. Come back and let's learn and explore again tomorrow.